Have you ever wondered why the most powerful women in history spoke the least about their personal lives? There's something magnetic about a woman who doesn't explain herself. She doesn't overshare, she doesn't need validation. She simply moves with quiet confidence, unshaken by judgment, untouched by noise. The world notices her, not because she shouts, but because she knows the value of silence. In a time where everyone is constantly talking, posting, and revealing every corner of their life, privacy has become a rebellion. And yet, it's in this rebellion that real power lies. You see, not everything a woman feels, thinks, or experiences is meant to be spoken. Especially not to a man. That might sound harsh. It might even feel unfair. But the truth is, not all men are built to handle the depth of what a woman carries. Not because they're weak, but because some things are sacred. Some things lose their meaning when they're exposed to someone who hasn't earned the right to hold them. The world teaches women that being open is a sign of trust, that vulnerability is the way to connection, but connection without boundaries is chaos, and vulnerability when given to the wrong person becomes a weapon. Every woman has felt it. That moment when you shared something personal, something painful, something raw, and instead of being understood, you were dismissed. Or worse, judged, used, thrown into a box labeled too emotional, too damaged, or too much. It's a pain that cuts deep. Not because of what you shared, but because you thought they'd understand. You hoped they would protect what you gave them. But what you gave so freely, they never saw as valuable. Here's the truth. No one tells you privacy is not secrecy. It's not about hiding. It's about honoring. Honoring your story, honoring your growth, honoring your emotions, because they are not for everyone. And certainly not for every man who walks into your life. There's a quiet strength in a woman who doesn't rush to tell her story, who doesn't explain her wounds to earn sympathy, who doesn't reveal her past just to feel seen. She knows her worth doesn't depend on how much someone else knows about her. It depends on how deeply she knows herself. And this kind of woman, she's unforgettable. Because while the world screams for attention, she draws it in by doing the opposite. She speaks less, but every word carries weight. She reveals less, but every action reveals her power. She moves with grace because she's not trying to prove anything. She already knows who she is. And men, they sense it. They don't always understand it, but they feel it. The pull of a woman who keeps a part of herself untouched, unshared, and sacred. The part that says, you don't get to know everything just because you showed up. You earn access to my truth. That's power. That's the kind of energy that separates the woman who's merely liked from the woman who's deeply respected, the woman who gets attention from the one who commands it. Because here's what most people won't tell you. When you speak less, people listen more. When you hold back, people lean in. When you protect your privacy, you create space for others to respect it too. And this doesn't mean shutting down. It doesn't mean being cold. It means knowing what to hold close, what to keep safe, what to protect. Not because you're scared, but because you value yourself enough to not give away everything for free. Your dreams, your struggles, your fears, your past, these are not conversation fillers. They're treasures. Not everyone deserves to touch them. If you stay until the end, you'll understand exactly what those treasures are, and why keeping them to yourself will not only protect your peace but elevate your worth in ways you never imagined. Because the more you master the art of keeping certain things private, the more you'll feel a shift in how people treat you, a shift in how men look at you, and most importantly, a shift in how you see yourself. You'll stop asking for understanding from people who are not built to give it. You'll stop needing applause for surviving things no one else can comprehend. And instead, you'll start walking with the quiet certainty of a woman who doesn't need to be seen to know she's valuable. Let others overshare. Let them give everything away for the illusion of closeness. You'll keep what's sacred, sacred. Because some things aren't meant to be told. They're meant to be kept, guarded, lived. And when you live like that, you don't just protect your peace. You awaken your power. And the moment you begin to guard what's sacred, something remarkable happens. Your energy shifts. You no longer feel the urge to explain who you are or justify where you've been. You stop giving people the blueprint to your soul and expecting them to treat it with care. Because you finally understand not everyone has the emotional maturity to handle your truth. Mystery becomes your shield. Not because you're hiding, but because you've risen above the need for approval. There's an undeniable power in being a woman who doesn't give everything away. A woman who lets people wonder, who chooses her words with intention, who leaves space for curiosity instead of offering every answer. That kind of presence demands respect without ever needing to ask for it. Psychology proves it. People value what they can't easily access. When something is rare, they chase it. When it's too available, they take it for granted. This is not just about relationships. This is about life. What you protect grows stronger. What you expose without thought becomes diluted, drained, and often discarded. There is deep wisdom in restraint, in holding back, in not always speaking your pain just because someone is willing to listen. Because the truth is, many listen with ears that only hear what suits them. They don't receive your words with understanding. They interpret them through their own fears, their own ego, their own limitations. And in doing so, they reduce your truth to something small, something they can label and control. But your story is not meant to be reduced. It's meant to be honored. There's a reason the most valuable parts of you feel vulnerable. They're raw, unfiltered, unpolished. That's where your beauty lies, not in perfection, but in truth. And truth, when misused, leaves a scar. That's why you must be careful. Not fearful, not closed, but careful. When you allow yourself to be fully known by someone who hasn't earned that privilege, you give them a tool they're not trained to hold, and too often they drop it. Not out of malice, but out of carelessness. Because some people only want the surface, the image, the idea, not the depth behind your silence. But you're not here to be easy to figure out. You're here to be powerful, to be respected, to be felt without needing to be explained. This is how you begin to rewire your mind, to understand that withholding is not withholding love. It's protecting peace. It's building self-respect. It's knowing that you are not responsible for making others feel comfortable with your complexity. Let them sit with the unknown. Let them lean into the silence. Because in that silence, your presence will echo louder than words ever could. Some women exhaust themselves trying to be understood, trying to explain every thought, every feeling, every decision. They spill themselves out, hoping someone will see their worth, but you don't need to do that. Your worth is not proven through words. It's proven through how you carry yourself when no one else gets it. That's emotional independence. That's inner stability. And that's what separates the woman who needs validation from the woman who chooses self-respect. You were not made to beg for understanding. You were made to be grounded in who you are. Even when the world misunderstands you. Even when a man questions your silence. Especially then, because that's when you stand taller. You don't shrink yourself to be digestible. You don't hand out your history like a brochure, hoping someone will read it and decide you're worthy. No, you walk forward with your head high, your energy calm, and your soul protected. That's what magnetism looks like. That's what strength feels like. When you don't need to be fully known by others to feel fully whole within yourself, you become untouchable. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let them lean in. You don't owe anyone full access just because they showed interest. Access is earned, and even then, it is given, not taken. Your peace is too valuable. Your growth is too sacred. And your spirit is too strong to be given away to someone who hasn't proven they can hold it. So protect your story, not out of fear, but out of power. Because when you do, you'll start to notice something. The right people don't need to know everything about you to respect you. The wrong ones won't respect you, even if you tell them everything. And when you see that clearly, you'll stop giving your energy to those who were never meant to receive it in the first place. You'll move in silence. You'll radiate confidence. And without saying a word, you'll remind the world, some women speak volumes just by keeping things private. And as you protect that sacred space within, you begin to realize something even more profound. Your silence teaches others how to treat you. Every time you choose not to overshare, not to explain your worth, not to open your soul on demand, you're setting a standard. A powerful, unspoken message: you don't get to define me, I define myself. This is the kind of self-respect that transforms how people see you. Because when you carry yourself like your life is valuable, others begin to believe it too. You stop attracting those who come to consume you, and you start drawing in those who come to honor you. Too many women have been trained to prove themselves, to unpack their life story in the first few conversations, to confess every flaw in an attempt to appear honest, open, and real. But truth without timing is dangerous. Vulnerability given to the wrong person is not noble. It's self-sabotage. It is not your duty to be an open book, especially not to someone who hasn't read even the cover with care. Your story is not a tool for approval. It's not a gift for the unworthy, it's a legacy you're still writing, one that should only be shared with those who've earned their place in your life. And here's the part that most ignore. Not everyone is ready to carry what you reveal. Not every man is equipped to understand your complexity, your layers, your truth. Some will pretend to listen, nod at the right times, make you feel safe just long enough for you to open up, only to later use your honesty as ammunition. Not always out of cruelty, but out of ignorance, out of a lack of emotional depth, out of a misunderstanding of what it means to hold someone with care. This is where your power must rise. Because the moment you realize your peace is worth more than being understood, you set yourself free. You no longer need to be heard by everyone. You no longer feel the pressure to be known inside and out by someone you just met. You don't mistake attention for respect or curiosity for commitment. You see through it all, and you choose differently. You choose to hold some things back, not because you're guarded, but because you're wise, because you understand that not all soil is worthy of your seeds, and not all ears are capable of hearing you without judgment. Let them wonder. Let them ask questions you don't feel the need to answer. Let them sit in silence while you remain rooted in your strength. This is the woman who shifts rooms without speaking, who holds her boundaries like a queen holds her crown, firm, unbothered, unapologetic. And here's the truth you need to hear. You don't owe your pain to anyone. You don't owe your past to a man who hasn't earned your future. You don't owe your emotions to someone who only offers temporary attention. You are not less authentic for keeping parts of yourself private. You are not less loving for choosing discretion over disclosure. You are not less strong for saying, that part of me is not for public consumption. In fact, that's where your real strength begins. Because a woman who knows what to keep to herself is a woman who knows her value. She doesn't need to convince. She doesn't need to explain. She doesn't rush to make someone see her heart. She simply lives in a way that commands respect. And the ones who are meant to stay, they will stay. Not because you spilled your story, but because they respected your silence. Because they saw something deeper behind your eyes and knew, there is more to this woman than I can see. And that mystery is not mine to invade, but to honor. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. So if you hand out your truth too easily, don't be surprised when it's handled carelessly. But when you guard it, when you treasure it, they will learn. And if they don't, they were never worthy of it in the first place. Let that be your compass. Let that guide your choices, because your energy is a gift, your mind is rare, your heart is priceless. And your past, your dreams, your inner world, it's not content to be consumed. It's a legacy in progress, one that deserves reverence. So you keep walking, head high, spirit calm, voice steady. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to be understood to be whole. And you don't need to share everything to be seen. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can say is nothing at all. There is a unique kind of freedom that comes when you stop giving everyone access to you. When you realize that not everything inside you needs to be explained, justified, or shared. That silence isn't emptiness, it's wisdom. And when you hold that wisdom, you no longer feel the need to prove your worth through words. Your energy speaks before you ever say a thing. The truth is, too many women have been conditioned to believe that openness equals trust, that transparency is always virtuous, that by sharing everything they are being strong. But real strength isn't measured by how much you expose. It's measured by how well you protect what matters. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. And not everyone who shows interest deserves to know your heart. Your silence is not rejection, it's discernment. It's your inner compass telling you who has the capacity to receive you and who doesn't. Because the wrong man will see your openness as weakness. He will take your past and use it as leverage. He will hear your insecurities and see an opportunity to manipulate. He will listen, not to understand, but to store ammunition for later. And when the moment suits him, he'll twist your words into weapons. This is why you must choose your silence as carefully as you choose your words. You are not required to give anyone a roadmap to your soul. You are not obligated to tell a man what broke you, what haunts you, or what made you who you are, especially when he hasn't shown he's strong enough to hold it without judgment. Your story is your power, but it only remains powerful when you protect it from those who haven't earned your trust. This is not about fear, it's about boundaries. It's about respecting yourself enough to say, I don't need you to understand everything about me in order for me to feel whole. That kind of mindset doesn't push people away. It filters them. It reveals who is real and who is just curious, who is ready and who is just passing time. You'll know the difference by how they respond to your silence. The ones who stay, even when they don't know everything, are the ones who see you beyond the surface. The ones who lean in with patience, not pressure. The ones who don't need full access to feel connection. Those are the rare ones. And the rest? Let them go. Let them be confused. Let them wonder why you didn't share more. Let them misinterpret your distance. You're not here to manage everyone's perception of you. You're here to protect your peace, your energy, your sacred space. There is strength in restraint, power in privacy, and confidence in keeping some things just for yourself. Every time you hold something back, not out of fear but out of power, you're reclaiming a part of yourself that the world tried to take. A part that was once given too freely, too soon to the wrong people. But not anymore. Now you move with intention. You speak with purpose. You trust your intuition when it tells you this part of me stays here. It belongs to me. And that self-trust, that is where your unshakable confidence comes from. Because when you stop needing others to validate your story, you start standing taller in your truth. There's nothing more magnetic than a woman who knows herself so deeply that she no longer rushes to be understood. She doesn't chase connection. She doesn't fear being alone. She knows that real connection comes when the right person meets the real her, and not a version of her that was shaped by the pressure to overshare. This is how you reclaim your power, not by being louder, not by giving more, but by choosing what stays within and what's allowed out. You are not cold for being private. You are not difficult for having boundaries. You are not broken because you don't hand over your soul to every man who shows you interest. You are wise. You are whole. You are rising into the kind of woman who doesn't just attract attention, she commands respect. And when you live like this, something else shifts. You no longer fear being misunderstood. Because you understand yourself. And that understanding, that inner knowing, is more valuable than any outside validation. So let your silence speak. Let your presence speak louder than your past. Let your boundaries build your legacy. You were never meant to be fully understood by everyone. You were meant to be respected, even in your mystery. When you truly understand the value of your silence, your presence begins to carry a different kind of weight. You're no longer a woman who gives herself away in fragments, hoping someone will see the whole picture. You become the woman who knows that wholeness doesn't require explanation, that the more you protect, the more you possess. Not just privacy, but power. Not just space, but sovereignty. The world doesn't teach this. It teaches women to be available, to be open, to be transparent in the name of trust. But real trust begins with trusting yourself first, trusting your voice, your timing, your instincts, trusting that not everyone needs access to your process, and definitely not to your pain. Because there are men who aren't looking for your truth, they're looking for your weakness. They ask about your past, not to honor it, but to measure how far they can push your boundaries. They want to know your insecurities, not to help heal them, but to figure out where your armor is thin. And if you've been through enough, you start to notice the pattern. The ones who want too much too soon, the ones who pressure you to open up, the ones who make you feel like silence is a flaw, but it's not a flaw, it's a filter. And the ones who can't sit in your silence are the ones who don't deserve your truth. Because the moment you tell a man everything, you give him a mirror of your soul. And not all men know what to do with a reflection that deep. You're not here to be unwrapped like a gift. You are not a confession booth for emotional tourists. You are a kingdom, a sacred space. And your walls are not meant to be torn down by anyone who knocks. Let them earn it. Let them wait. Let them show up with consistency, not just curiosity. Let them prove they can stay through your silence before they ever deserve your story. This is how high-value women move. They don't chase connection, they allow it. They don't force understanding, they embody it. They don't reveal everything, they reveal enough to see who's really listening. And what you begin to discover is this. Real connection doesn't require full exposure. It requires real presence. The kind of presence that doesn't demand performance. The kind that honors your quiet. The kind that feels safe. Not because everything is said, but because nothing needs to be forced. You never need to trade your depth for someone's attention. You never need to strip your soul just to prove you're real. You never need to offer your secrets to feel seen. You are already enough. Even in silence. You are already whole, even in solitude. And when you carry that kind of energy, people feel it. They feel your groundedness. They feel your certainty. They feel that there is more to you, and they respect that they don't get to see it all. Because real women don't live to be seen, they live to be understood. And when they are not understood, they stay unshaken. Because they don't rely on someone else's perception to feel powerful. You can walk into any room and say nothing, and still lead the energy. You can speak less and still say more. Because when your silence is rooted in strength, it becomes your loudest message. Let them underestimate you. Let them assume they know you. Let them create their own narrative. You don't need to correct them. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to rush to be known. Because the ones who truly matter won't need the whole story to respect the one holding it. And as you continue to protect what's sacred, you begin to grow from within. You find peace in being selective. You find power in being misunderstood. You find freedom in not giving away what took you years to rebuild. That's the shift. That's the glow. Not the kind that comes from validation, but the kind that comes from discipline. From being so rooted in your worth that silence becomes your strength, not your shame. And that's the kind of woman who changes everything. Not because she reveals herself to the world, but because she chooses who gets to see her world at all. There comes a point when you stop asking, will they understand me? And start asking, do they even deserve access to me? That shift isn't arrogance, it's awakening. Because when you've been through enough pain, enough betrayal, enough lessons disguised as love, you don't guard your heart out of fear, you guard it out of wisdom. You've learned that not everyone who shows up deserves a front row seat to your soul. You no longer bend to be accepted. You no longer soften your truth to keep the peace. You no longer translate your value in hopes that someone finally gets it. You live it, you walk it, you radiate it in silence. Because your life, your energy, your boundaries, these are your language now. And the ones meant for you will hear it loud and clear. You stop rushing to make people comfortable with who you are. You let your presence speak. You let your actions reveal what your words no longer need to explain. And that kind of presence, steady, unapologetic, grounded, becomes magnetic. Not because you're trying to be seen, but because you've made peace with being invisible to the wrong ones. And here's the truth. Most avoid, sometimes, the reason you feel drained is because you've been giving too much of yourself to people who never earned your depth. People who loved your light but disappeared when you needed warmth. People who asked for your time but never offered loyalty. People who wanted access but not responsibility. So you start doing something radical. You stop explaining yourself. You stop oversharing in hopes of being chosen. You stop bleeding emotionally to prove you're worthy of love. You stand, quiet, certain, powerful, and you wait. Not for approval, not for applause, but for alignment. Because when you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you stop trying to be everything to everyone, you become everything to yourself. And in that wholeness, you find clarity. You see who comes close without needing an invitation. You watch who respects your silence without demanding explanations. You notice who honors your boundaries without trying to negotiate them. And this is where your healing begins, not in the noise of being seen, but in the stillness of being true. Not in being understood, but in understanding yourself so deeply that you no longer need external permission to be whole. This kind of clarity doesn't come overnight. It comes from choosing yourself when it's hardest, from walking away when your heart still lingers, from standing alone when everything in you wants to be held, but you do it. Not because you're heartless, but because you've learned what it costs to hand your heart to the wrong hands. You remember how it felt to be vulnerable too soon, to tell someone everything, and later regret it, to give your all to someone who only wanted pieces. And now, you honor your growth by moving differently. You become the woman who speaks with silence error in message stream. You become the woman who speaks with silence, and yet says more than 1,000 words ever could. Because silence is no longer the absence of voice, it becomes the presence of power. Power that no longer needs to be performed. Power that is rooted in knowing exactly who you are, what you carry, and what you refuse to compromise anymore. You've felt what it's like to give pieces of yourself away just to be understood. You've lowered your standards in the name of love. You've stayed quiet when you should have walked away. You've trusted too quickly. You've explained too much. You've tolerated too long. And now, you're done. Not out of bitterness, but out of rebirth. Because the woman you are becoming is no longer available for anything that costs her peace, her worth, or her dignity. This version of you no longer mistakes attention for affection. She doesn't confuse attraction with loyalty. She doesn't crave temporary comfort at the expense of long-term self-respect. She knows that not every connection is meant to grow roots. Some are simply lessons wrapped in charm. And once you learn what your silence is worth, you no longer trade it for shallow validation. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not distant. You are deliberate. You are not guarded. You are grounded. And this clarity doesn't push the right people away. It draws them closer, because your energy no longer wavers based on who stays or who walks. You are steady. You are self-contained. You are sacred. And here's what shakes the world the most: a woman who no longer seeks permission to be herself. A woman who no longer feels guilty for protecting her story, her softness, her standards. A woman who no longer apologizes for having boundaries, for being selective, for walking alone. Because walking alone no longer feels like loneliness. It feels like alignment. You no longer need to explain why you won't repeat your past, why you're not eager to hand your soul to a stranger with a smile, why you're no longer rushing to be vulnerable with someone who hasn't proven they can hold it. Because you've learned the difference between chemistry and character, between interest and intention, between words and actions. This is the kind of growth that can't be faked. It's felt. It's seen in how you carry yourself, how you protect your energy, how you say no without guilt and yes without fear. It's seen in how you listen to your intuition and trust it, even when it whispers what your heart doesn't want to hear. And that's the part no one tells you. Your healing will ask you to disappoint others before you ever disappoint yourself again. It will ask you to walk away, to say less, to do less, to be less available to the chaos you once called connection. It will demand that you choose yourself in rooms where you once shrunk to be chosen. But that's what evolution looks like. You outgrow the version of you that gave everything without checking who was receiving it. You outgrow the urge to explain why your boundaries exist. You outgrow the fear of being misunderstood. Because when your peace matters more than being liked, you finally step into the life that was waiting for the real you to show up. You are no longer someone who is easily impressed by words, promises, or charm. You've heard it all. You've lived through it all. Now you're watching patterns. You're watching consistency. You're watching how people respect your silence, not just how they respond to your voice. Because real connection isn't built in conversations, it's built in actions. So you slow down. You observe. You stop revealing everything. You start listening more to how you feel, not just what you hear. And the more you trust yourself, the less you need to be understood by anyone else. You realize now that your story is not meant for every ear. Your heart is not meant for every hand. And your soul is not meant for every man who walks into your life with a charming smile and empty intentions. You don't exist to be unraveled. You exist to be honored. And that starts with how you honor yourself. By staying private, staying powerful, and staying true. The right one won't need you to prove anything. He will feel your worth in your silence. He will respect what you don't say more than what you do. He will recognize that your mystery is not a wall, it's a mirror. A reflection of everything you've healed, everything you've rebuilt, and everything you've become. So you keep holding your peace like a crown. You keep walking with your head high and your soul intact. You keep choosing yourself with the kind of confidence that no longer needs explanation. Because when you protect your truth, you protect your future. And that, more than anything, is what sets you apart. You are no longer who you were. You are who you decided to become. Whole, unapologetic, untouchable. There is an unshakable confidence that grows in a woman who no longer feels the need to be understood by everyone. She doesn't raise her voice to prove a point. She doesn't stretch herself to meet expectations she never agreed to. She doesn't hand out pieces of her story like it's owed to the world. Her silence, her restraint, her composure. These are no longer signs of weakness. They are the language of a woman who knows her worth in full. You can feel it in the way she walks into a room, not with arrogance but with certainty. The kind of certainty that doesn't depend on how others react to her. The kind that was earned through pain, through boundaries, through choosing herself when it was hardest. She's been through the fire, and instead of becoming ashes, she became light. A different kind of light. One that doesn't blind but reveals. One that doesn't chase but draws. This kind of woman understands something rare and powerful. That privacy is not about hiding, it's about protecting. Not just protecting facts, but protecting energy, protecting alignment, protecting the sacred process of becoming. Because real transformation doesn't need an audience. Real healing happens in quiet rooms. And the ones who try to demand access to that process are often the ones who wouldn't respect what they find anyway. She doesn't keep things private because she's afraid. She keeps them private because they are hers. Her goals, her fears, her healing, her truth. Not every man deserves to hear what shaped her. Not every man gets to know the battles she's fought to become who she is. Because some will use that knowledge to connect, and others will use it to control. And she can feel the difference now. She no longer entertains men who only want to understand her so they can mold her. She no longer softens herself to be more digestible. She doesn't hand over her story hoping to be loved. She lets her presence speak. And if that's not enough, she's not interested. Because real connection, real love, doesn't ask you to prove who you are. It honors who you are without needing the entire backstory. She sees through performance now. She hears the tone behind the words. She watches how someone handles her boundaries before she even considers letting them in. And if something feels off, she walks away. Not because she's scared, but because she's seen what ignoring her intuition costs. When a woman reaches this level of self-awareness, she no longer seeks safety in others. She becomes her own anchor, her own source, her own home. And that shifts everything. She stops settling, she stops explaining, she stops waiting. And most of all, she stops giving herself away in pieces to men who never intended to stay. She becomes the kind of woman whose presence teaches others how to treat her. Not through force, but through example. She doesn't beg for respect, she embodies it. She doesn't request loyalty, she inspires it. She doesn't demand to be valued. She carries herself in a way that makes it clear she already is. This energy is rare, and that's why it's powerful. Because most people are loud in their insecurity. Most reveal too much too soon, hoping for validation. But not her. She's quiet, calm, watchful. Not because she's unsure, but because she's already sure of who she is. And when you're that certain, you realize that not every man deserves the softest parts of you just because he's curious. She doesn't open up easily now. She doesn't fall for potential. She looks for peace. She looks for consistency. She looks for a man whose actions align with his words, and if they don't, she moves on. Not with drama, but with grace. Because she no longer confuses love with attachment. She knows that anything forced isn't love. It's fear, and she refuses to be led by fear anymore. She would rather be alone in her peace than entangled in chaos disguised as love. She would rather be misunderstood in truth than accepted through pretending. She would rather grow in silence than shrink for approval. And this kind of woman, this kind of power, terrifies those who thrive on control. Because they can't manipulate what they can't access. They can't break what they can't reach. And so she rises, not loudly but deeply. Not by chasing attention, but by choosing intention. Every step she takes is deliberate. Every word she speaks is measured. Every person she lets close has earned it. Because her privacy is no longer a wall, it's a gateway, a test, a filter for energy that's no longer allowed to drain her. She knows now that real love won't rush her. Real love won't need her to unfold on demand. Real love will sit with her silence and feel safe in it. It will come with respect, with patience, with presence. And until that arrives, she will remain whole, steady, hidden in her peace. Because a woman who keeps her heart guarded by wisdom is not hard to love, she's just hard to misuse. And that is her power now. Not in being known, but in being true. Not in being open, but in being intentional. Not in being loud, but in being unshakably grounded in who she is. There's a freedom that only comes when a woman stops performing. When she no longer lives to be liked, chosen, or understood. When her value is no longer tied to how many people praise her softness, her patience, or her willingness to endure what should never have been hers to carry. She finally sees that approval is not a currency she needs to survive. Her worth is not negotiable. Her truth does not require applause. This kind of woman becomes dangerous to every system that taught her to shrink, because she's no longer waiting to be saved, she's saving herself. She's no longer trying to prove her strength through suffering. She no longer glorifies staying when leaving is the path to self-respect. And above all, she no longer believes that giving her all means sacrificing her peace. She doesn't wear pain like a badge. She doesn't call chaos love. She doesn't confuse emotional labor with loyalty. She recognizes now that anything she has to abandon herself to keep was never meant for her. Because the truth is simple, love should not cost your identity. It should not silence your voice. It should not demand you betray your intuition just to keep someone comfortable. Now, she chooses differently. She sees the red flags in charm. She feels the shift when respect begins to fade. She listens to how her body reacts when a man's energy feels off. No more giving chances just to avoid loneliness. No more accepting bare minimum disguised as effort. No more turning away from the truth just because it's inconvenient. She's learned the hardest lesson: peace is more valuable than potential. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away without a single explanation, not out of anger but out of clarity. Because when you finally understand what you deserve, your silence becomes louder than your pain ever was. She doesn't need closure from a man who couldn't offer consistency. She doesn't need an apology to validate what she already knows. She doesn't wait for someone to see her worth. She reflects it back to herself every single day, through the standards she keeps, through the boundaries she honors, through the energy she protects. The woman she is now is not bitter. She's discerning, not cold, just cautious, not unloving, just no longer interested in sacrificing her essence for temporary connection. She no longer entertains the idea that love is something you earn through suffering. She knows now, love is something you receive when you're already whole. And her privacy? It's sacred. It's her safe place, her quiet strength, her reminder that not everything needs to be shared to be real. Not every emotion needs an audience. Not every thought requires explanation. Because there's power in being fully present with yourself before you ever invite someone else into your space. She's become the kind of woman who doesn't react, she responds. She doesn't chase, she attracts. She doesn't beg, she chooses. And she doesn't fear losing anyone because she's already done the hardest thing: she stopped losing herself. This isn't the kind of strength that shouts. It's the kind that radiates. The kind that people feel when she enters a room. The kind that commands respect without asking for it. And the reason it's so powerful is because it's real. It's earned. It's built brick by brick, boundary by boundary, choice by choice. She has nothing to prove. She's not in competition. She's not seeking validation. She's living from a place of inner knowing. The kind of knowing that only comes from facing your shadows and still choosing to rise. From sitting in the silence of heartbreak and rebuilding without bitterness. From walking away from what once felt like everything and realizing you lost nothing worth keeping. Now she's magnetic. Not because she tries to be, but because she's authentic. She says less and observes more. She shares less and feels more. And in that space of quiet power, she finds herself attracting not noise, but depth. Not attention, but intention. Not boys who want access, but men who bring value. And she understands one thing above all else. What is meant for her will never ask her to become less. It will never require her to give up her boundaries. It will never make her question her intuition. It will feel calm. It will feel safe. It will feel like home, not a storm. So she continues to evolve, to grow in silence, to choose herself, again and again. Because she knows now the greatest act of self-love is not just saying no to others, it's saying yes to herself. And from that place everything changes. Her energy shifts, her path clears, her circle tightens, and her soul finally breathes in the freedom of being exactly who she was always meant to be. Unfiltered, unapologetic, untouchable.